So ladies and gentlemen, people of the DCU, we are finally here with the first official teaser trailer for Peacemaker Season 2. And don't forget, we're now in the DCU. Very evidently, with some particular characters that pop up in the first few seconds of this teaser trailer. And also, you know, just how we get to see the DCEU Peacemaker meet the DCU Peacemaker at the very end. So, you already know it, we're going to get into an in-depth, and I mean in-depth breakdown at what goodies we get out of this trailer, what story it teases us with, and any little insight really that we can get into this whole new continuity, and big theories such as how, you know, that DCEU Peacemaker, or our Peacemaker rather, could end up taking the DCU's Peacemaker's place, if you're still with me there. So strap yourselves in, let me know your thoughts on the teaser, any theories of course, and let's just get right into this. So first up, I have to say I did not really expect for this teaser to open the way it did. And that's where we see Leota Adebayo, who's Amanda Waller's daughter, dropping off Peacemaker to an interview in the Crank Toys building, which is a little bit of a Easter egg or nod, if you will, at the toy maker. But Leota says that, you know, they're going to be doing backflips to get you to join. And, you know, join what exactly? Well, that is Maxwell Lord's frickin' LordTech superhero team. This is what I mean with how I didn't really expect that, given that we haven't even seen them in Superman yet. So I do want to remind everyone here that Peacemaker Season 2, and I'll add in parentheses here, in general, is set after the events of Superman. And so what we're seeing right now, or right here with Hawkgirl, Maxwell Lord, and Guy Gardner, the Green Lantern, everything that happens in the plot of Superman, in theory, has already happened. And I say in theory because of something I'm going to get into in just a few moments' time, as not everything may be as it appears. So Maxwell Lord welcomes Peacemaker in and asks him to tell them a little bit about himself. And just overall here, like, I'm super interested in all of this because there's just so many questions that this all raises and, you know, could also debunk other theories fans have had at the same time from speculating about Superman. So let's start there. So this, in theory, immediately rules out the idea that some people had of the LordTech heroes in Superman getting new suits by the end of the movie. Although, again, I'll mention something in a minute that might change this. Now, next up is that it appears that they haven't even left Maxwell Lord's team. That was also a theory that I've been dabbling with, just in the sense of how we've explored the idea here on the channel that in this new world in the DCU that has had metahumans exist for a long time already, with James Gunn stating that there's more of them today than there used to be, and they're more of an issue today than they used to be. Well, I've explored the whole idea that you probably heard me say 1,000 times before of how with Superman perhaps maybe inspiring other heroes to get more superhero autonomy by the ending events of the film, that, you know, maybe you would have had Hawkgirl and others leave this LordTech company logo branded superhero team to, well, just go and get their own suit, their own superhero autonomy, but apparently not. And if anything, it appears that they're still very much so a part of this team and are looking for new members after the events of Superman, which is why Peacemaker is here in the first place. And with that point being made, I do also want to chuck in the theory, just going off of this being set after Superman, for now. Again, this goes, I know I keep teasing it, but there's a thing that could unravel everything I'm saying. I do want to chuck in the theory that Mr. Terrific could have perhaps left, as he's not here, of course, and given that they're interviewing for a new LordTech hero member. But of course, it's just possible that he's not present for the interview and that maybe they're looking for new members to join the team anyway. But if this is set after the events of Superman in this very interview scene here, it would be pretty cool, depending on the setting of the scene, that Mr. Terrific could have maybe left the team for one reason or another, and maybe he's gone off with Metamorpho, and it would be pretty cool if that kickstarts the Terrifics team from the comics. However, despite everything that I said about the LordTech team, now we need to get into what I've been teasing, of which could maybe unravel this. So I heavily want to stress, as with trailers, all might not be as it seems. So you may be like, Boba, what the hell are you talking about? Just get to the point already. So, with all of that being said, I do want to add in the theory and really stress the idea that you could technically argue that even though Peacemaker Season 2 is set after Peacemaker Season 1, we know this, and also set after the events of Superman, as confirmed by James Gunn, not to mention when Peacemaker bursts out of the interview, Leota's like, why? We saved the world, obviously referring to them saving the world at the end of Season 1 from the butterfly invasion. It could still be the case that this could be very early on in, let's say, Season 2, Episode 1, for example, in where we could see what Peacemaker has got up to after saving the world from the butterfly invasion, such as trying to join LordTech, before the events of Superman. But then he gets rejected, as we see in this scene, and then you could maybe get a 4 months later type thing, bringing us into the present day after Superman. I kind of hope that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Like, when we're seeing this, it may appear one way, but it might not actually be what we think. So therefore, if this interview scene could possibly be set before the events of Superman, then, yeah, they could still technically get new suits after the Superman movie. I just really want to leave the door open to that idea because I know I keep saying it, but you can never truly trust trailers to be what they look like, especially with the DCEU to DCU change that Gunn said Peacemaker Season 2 will be addressing. And obviously, more on that later with the teaser trailer ending, because that opens a whole new can of worms with how they're going to handle that universe transition. And I really do have quite the theory as to what could end up happening, given that there's 2 Peacemakers from each respective universe that they show. So stay tuned to the end of this video to hear that theory, and I kind of need your help on it as well. There is also technically the idea that they could not recruit Peacemaker, obviously, and they go on to recruit Mr. Terrific after this, that I've seen some people say. But if this is indeed set before Superman at this initial part in the season, as per what I was saying, my whole counter argument to that would be, like, to me, it seems that the LordTech suits are inspired by Mr. Terrific's suit and the comic book design of his suit. So given that they're wearing them here, Mr. Terrific, if you want to kind of go down that line of thinking, would have to have already have been a part of this team to have that, like, design established. I mean, either way, I don't know truly, but I would love to know your thoughts and everything I just rambled about. Also, if you're still watching right now, and I hope you are because we've got so much more to break down, I'd really, really deeply appreciate a like on this video if you are enjoying the content. Next up, Peacemaker tries to sell himself here, and Maxwell, Lord, Hawkgirl, and Gardner thought their mic was turned off, and, after interviewing a lot of people already, they start tuning out of Peacemaker's interview and don't really take him seriously, which I kind of felt bad about because bro did actually save the world with Team Peacemaker. Now, Hawkgirl talks about her butt and eating popcorn, and Maxwell Lord even says that Peacemaker sucks, and they don't really give him a fair shot. Again, as Leota said when he went back in the car, we saved the whole world. It's true. For those of you who don't remember Season 1 very well, they literally prevented an alien butterfly invasion. But it seems that despite achieving such a feat, places or teams like LordTech and its heroes will not take Team Peacemaker or Peacemaker himself very seriously. So, also, what I found interesting about this scene is, we get more up-close shots of Hawkgirl and Gardner, a little bit of the way that they act and their demeanor, seeing a bit more texture to their suits, and a more up-close look at Gardner's Green Lantern ring. And to be honest, I still think people will want their upgraded suits despite getting a little bit of a better look here. But moving on, after this whole intro bit, 'cause we've been talking about that for quite a while now, we get to see the other members of Team Peacemaker and what they've been up to in their lives after saving the world in Season 1. With Vigilante saying that they thought everyone would finally treat them like heroes. And considering that Vigilante said that, maybe not much has changed for them at all, and perhaps they've even lost their purpose. You know, we see that Harcourt is getting into bar fights, with John Economos even saying to Leota that she's living in the lowest level of Grand Theft Auto, and it makes me wonder if here he's actually trying to put the 11th Street kids back together, which is when we're teased with one big part of the plot, one that a lot of us have been wondering about for a very long time now, ever since we knew that Frank Grillo's Rick Flag Sr. was joining Peacemaker Season 2. And so we hear from John Economos, or Diebeard, that Argus has been monitoring Peacemaker ever since Rick Flag Sr. was named director. And for all of you who don't remember, Joel Kinnaman played Rick Flag Jr. in the DCEU, and Peacemaker killed him in the Suicide Squad. And now, obviously, his father, Rick Flag Sr., played by Frank Grillo, might not be too happy about that one. And, we've heard from Frank Grillo in the past, and I'm paraphrasing here from an interview, but he said, more or less after coming into the position that he does with being the head of Argus, it gives him a slight bit more of an insight and details into the incident of what happened with his son. So I guess you could say, whereas Waller beforehand wouldn't have gone after Peacemaker because of what happened between him and Rick Flag Jr., and if anything, she gave him that butterfly invasion mission in Season 1, well, now that you've got the father as the head of Argus in charge, well, he's probably learned new context to the events of the Suicide Squad, as we see in the trailer, and, he would want to dispatch a lot of Argus agents to go after him. Although I have been wondering this whole time if it could be smoothed out at some point in this. Maybe not smoothed out, or not that Rick Flag Sr. would forgive Peacemaker, but there could be a larger thing at hand that they need to deal with in the season overall that perhaps leads them to work together. But of course, there could be a whole season of Rick Flag Sr. going after Team Peacemaker. But I just kind of struggle to believe that would be the overarching plot of the entire show's second season. Now, as Argus burst into Peacemaker's home, we see him burst out with Eagly on the escape, and it looks like he's holding a handbag here. Maybe he's got one of his helmets in it, because it looks like this could bring him to the cabin in the woods, where it appears that one of his helmets go off, or detonates, if you will. And we see that he's wearing the same thing, and him and Leota get knocked flying back, which does make me wonder if he plants it in the cabin as bait for Argus agents to go after it, for it to only then detonate, and not to mention that very same cabin that blows up could be the same one that we see in this shot here, where Rick Flag Sr. goes in and looks really pissed off, kicks stuff around. Perhaps he was hoping to find Peacemaker, but if this is the same cabin, he would obviously get out of there just in time. Now, next up, we finally get to see who this was from that shot that James Gunn teased us with quite a long time ago now, and it's bloody Michael Rooker. So, I don't know who this is. I guess it's not Apache Chief, because, it'd be a bit of an odd look to cast Michael Rooker as that character, given that he's not exactly Native American. But either way, the character that Michael Rooker is playing appears to have some kind of metahuman powers, or something imbued from some kind of artifact. So I'm very intrigued to see how this character fits in. If you have any ideas, let me know. Now, as other shots of the trailer unfolds, we get to see more action of Team Peacemaker being pursued, and I think that this character here could possibly be Saul Rodriguez's Sasha Bordeux. She has links to Batman in the comics, and I've been very intrigued ever since we heard of her casting, but adaptations don't copy and paste, so we're gonna have to wait and see what could be going on with her. Now, speaking of Team Peacemaker being pursued, this is where we need to get into the crazy pocket dimension level stuff, and how Peacemaker Season 2 will address the literal universe change from the DCEU to the new DCU. So we see Team Peacemaker in this pocket dimension here, and it looks like Leota is injured in this particular shot, and Harcourt here is being dragged by Vigilante. Now, I do want to stress that this appears to be the same pocket dimension that Peacemaker's father, White Dragon, had installed on the inside of his house. So it could be the case that maybe after being pursued so heavily by Rick Flag Sr. and Argus, that the only place that they can think to go is the pocket dimension for safety. But the thing is, at the very, very end of the teaser, we see Peacemaker in the same pocket dimension, right? Like, he's in fairly casual wear. They're like in his underwear, so he's not exactly at a high stress level here. So he's just wandering around his dad's kind of gadgety arms room, pocket dimension room, evidently at a different point in time. And he opens a door. And it's kind of like a Monsters, Inc. type door, if you ask me, that takes him into a whole completely different location, or should I say universe. So, you know, on a side note, to think that White Dragon had all kinds of crazy access to other universes is nuts. I mean, I always thought it was pretty damn mental that he had a pocket dimension in his house, but that's got to be essentially what this is, doorways to other universes. Because as Peacemaker opens the door, he seemingly enters the DCU's world, the new universe where we're going to be watching all of this stuff like Superman unfold. And thus, the location of the DCU's Peacemakers HQ, I guess. And this DCU Peacemaker, I'm sensing, is kind of very much so a regressed version of our Peacemaker, one that hasn't grown in the same ways that our Peacemaker has during Season 1 and after the events of the Suicide Squad, and maybe he's more like his father's son, as we do see in this location that our Peacemaker walks into, is that he has all of these trophies on display. There's a red dragon mask that's on display, so maybe he's quite close to his father, and that's like the DCU's version, by the way, because in the DCEU it was White Dragon, but in the DCU, it's going to be Red Dragon. And then, all of a sudden, what we're going to call the DCU Peacemaker pops up behind our Peacemaker and asks, "Who the F are you?" Okay, so theory time. Stay with me here, because this does get a bit wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey, mind headachy. So I think that one way or another, this is like the safe assumption here, that the way the universe change is addressed, or perhaps happens, is because our Peacemaker from Season 1, from the DCEU, could very well take over and replace the DCU Peacemakers. So maybe this scene isn't like a long held up thing in Season 2 with the DCU Peacemaker. Like, maybe it's quite possibly a fight that could break out in this very moment that ends up with the DCU Peacemaker dying and our Peacemaker being like, "Oh, feck, like, you know, what have I done? Oh god," and he just puts on his armor and whatnot, and maybe it like ends up in a scene with you know, what you're seeing on screen right now, with perhaps this being our Peacemaker wearing the DCU Peacemaker armor. And I have to admit though, guys, like, honestly, that's the safe assumption, but this is where my theory more or less ends, because it eventually leads to more and more questions with each answer that you come up with. It's like 3 pop up in its place, such as, okay, all right, so who does that mean Rick Flag Sr. is in the trailer that we've seen so far? The DCEU version that has dispatched Argus agents after Peacemaker, or the DCU version who is also after the DCU's version of Peacemaker because he also killed his son in the DCU, if you're still with me there. Do you see what I mean? Like, it begs questions like that. Like, could it be the Rick Flag Sr. who is after Peacemaker is the DCEU one? And maybe the new Rick Flag Sr. in the DCU isn't all gung-ho about going after Peacemaker and killing him. So when our Peacemaker takes over the DCU's Peacemaker's position, maybe he slides in without the threat of Rick Flag Sr. in that new universe. It's honestly these kinds of questions which I'm going round and round and round in circles with. But either way, I think for Peacemaker to indeed carry on, that they'll have to eventually settle down in the new DCU we're going ahead with in the main continuity, which does mean, yes, the safe assumption, as I keep calling it, is that they'll go in this pocket dimension, the White Dragon pocket dimension, and go through the Monsters, Inc. type door and not come back out of it. They'll be in the new universe. And in this new universe, as we've seen from that set photo, for those of you who remember, White Dragon is now Red Dragon. There's also another hero standing next to White Dragon in the middle. Like, there's Peacemaker on one side, Red Dragon in the middle, and another hero, which many people are theorizing to be maybe Peacemaker's dead brother in the DCU, who isn't so dead, and eventually grew up to become a hero. Well, a hero, if you will. There could be all kinds of crazy stuff like that, which is about to unfold, and that they'll have to adapt to with their new lives in this new universe that is the DCU. Even shots like this earlier on in the trailer as well, that we see this shot here of Peacemaker with Harcourt, and he's wearing the new suit. Now, you could say, sure, that this is the DCU Peacemaker, but I don't think it is. So again, I wonder if the DCU Peacemaker actually maybe dies quite comedically quick in that scene that we saw at the very end, and that the adventure of this new season is not only Rick Flag Sr. maybe going after our Peacemaker, but is really about them crashing a whole new universe and getting stuck from there on out. But also, it is possible that the Peacemaker holding a gun to our Peacemaker's head does last a little bit longer than that. You know, we're going to have to wait and see. So I conclude, for me, like, the only headache-inducing stuff that's hard to speculate about is the whole which Rick Flag Sr. are we seeing, as we do have very little footage and information to work off of there. Because obviously, there would be a Rick Flag Sr. in the DCEU, but also in the DCU. And yet, we've already seen Rick Flag Sr. in Creature Commandos with John Economos, Diebeard, and that's the DCU version. So it's like, that's where stuff gets a tad confusing. But if there's one thing I am confident about, it's that our Peacemaker has to go over to the new DCU or take over the DCU's Peacemaker's life, and thus taking his suit, which is why he's wearing that suit in that one scene. At least I believe that's him wearing it, R1. And yeah, I think that's where I'm going to end this video, because I've rambled enough, and that's basically all there is to this teaser trailer. But it was certainly a lot more than what I was, you know, bargaining for. So I loved what I saw. I like the tone of it. It's still very Peacemaker. The comedic vibes were still there. Like, if you watch Peacemaker and like season 1, you absolutely know what to expect. It's just I'm really on board to see, okay, what is the train ride to the DCU? And, like, that's potentially bigger than what I thought it was going to be with the I thought it was going to be more of a subtle change, like a bit of a meta change for those who know would know. But it seems like they're incorporating it a lot more into the plot than what some of us had initially thought. So any theories, any ideas on my ideas, or any ideas that I didn't mention, let me know down in the comments below. If you've made it to this point in the video, I would greatly appreciate a like. Consider subscribing. Like, if you're still watching right now, I know I've said this a lot recently, but you're still watching, you may as well subscribe, or at least check the subscribe button to make sure that you haven't clicked it yet, and so maybe you will now. But I'm going to shut up now. Again, guys, really appreciate you watching. Feels great to get Peacemaker Season 2 footage, and it felt great doing a good old Boba ramble about it. But until next time, I hope you all have an absolutely lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you people of the DCU in the next video. Goodbye.